Welcome back to Above the Clouds, the untold stories of aviation. I'm your host, and in our last episode, we explored the extraordinary luxury experience that defines private aviation, from personalized service and gourmet catering to advanced technology and relationship building that extends far beyond simple transportation. Today, we're addressing one of the most important challenges facing aviation in the 21st century: environmental sustainability. We're going to explore how private aviation is not just responding to environmental concerns, but actually leading the charge towards sustainable flight through innovative technologies, alternative fuels, and comprehensive environmental programs that are shaping the future of aviation. As someone who has been deeply involved in private aviation for decades, I can tell you that environmental responsibility isn't just a trend or marketing message in our industry. It's a fundamental commitment that's driving significant investment and innovation. The private aviation industry recognizes that our long-term success depends on developing sustainable solutions that allow us to continue providing exceptional service while minimizing our environmental impact. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Picture the future of aviation, where aircraft are powered by clean electricity or sustainable fuels that produce no net carbon emissions, where every flight contributes to environmental restoration through advanced carbon offset programs, where the convenience and efficiency of private aviation actually helps reduce overall transportation emissions by enabling more efficient travel patterns. This isn't science fiction, it's the future that the private aviation industry is actively creating today. Let's start by acknowledging the environmental challenges that aviation faces and the responsibility that comes with operating in an industry that has traditionally relied on fossil fuels. Aviation currently accounts for approximately 2% of global carbon emissions, and while this is a relatively small percentage compared to other industries, the aviation industry recognizes the importance of reducing this impact as part of global efforts to address climate change. Private aviation, as a segment of the broader aviation industry, has faced particular scrutiny because of the perception that it serves primarily luxury purposes rather than essential transportation needs. This criticism has motivated the private aviation industry to become a leader in developing and implementing sustainable aviation solutions. But here's what many people don't understand about private aviation's environmental impact. When used strategically, private aviation can actually be more environmentally efficient than commercial aviation for certain types of travel. A private jet carrying 6 passengers directly between 2 cities can have a lower per-passenger carbon footprint than those same passengers taking connecting commercial flights with multiple stops. The key is using private aviation intelligently and responsibly, combined with aggressive efforts to reduce the environmental impact of the aircraft and operations themselves. This is where the private aviation industry's leadership in sustainable aviation becomes apparent. Private aviation companies have been early adopters of sustainable aviation fuels, investors in electric aircraft development, and pioneers in comprehensive carbon offset programs. They've recognized that environmental responsibility isn't just about compliance or public relations. It's about ensuring the long-term viability and social acceptance of private aviation. Let me give you some specific examples of how private aviation is leading environmental innovation. Companies in our industry were among the first to invest in sustainable aviation fuel development and implementation. They've been early customers for electric aircraft manufacturers, providing the market demand that's driving technological development. They've developed sophisticated carbon offset programs that go far beyond simple tree planting to include verified, measurable environmental restoration projects. This leadership in environmental innovation demonstrates that private aviation isn't just responding to environmental concerns, it's actively working to solve them through technological innovation and responsible business practices. The development of electric aircraft represents one of the most exciting and promising developments in sustainable aviation. Electric aircraft use battery-powered electric motors instead of traditional jet engines, producing zero direct emissions and significantly reduced noise levels. While the technology is still evolving, electric aircraft are already demonstrating the potential to revolutionize short and medium-range aviation. Several companies are developing electric aircraft specifically for private aviation applications, recognizing that the private aviation market provides an ideal testing ground for new technologies. Private aviation clients are often early adopters of new technology, and the operational patterns of private aviation, with frequent, short, and medium-range flights, are well suited to current electric aircraft capabilities. The advantages of electric aircraft go beyond just environmental benefits. Electric motors are significantly quieter than jet engines, which could allow private aircraft to operate from airports that currently have noise restrictions. Electric motors also have fewer moving parts than jet engines, potentially reducing maintenance costs and improving reliability. Let me tell you about some of the electric aircraft that are currently in development and testing. Companies like Aviation, Hart Aerospace, and Wright Electric are developing electric aircraft that can carry 6 to 20 passengers on flights of 200 to 500 miles. These aircraft are designed specifically for the types of missions that are common in private aviation: short to medium-range flights between business centers. The performance characteristics of these electric aircraft are impressive. They can cruise at speeds comparable to traditional turboprop aircraft, with ranges that cover a significant percentage of private aviation missions. As battery technology continues to improve, the range and performance of electric aircraft will continue to increase. But perhaps most importantly, electric aircraft represent a pathway to truly sustainable aviation for short and medium-range flights. When powered by electricity generated from renewable sources like solar or wind power, electric aircraft can achieve net zero or even negative carbon emissions. The private aviation industry's investment in and adoption of electric aircraft technology is helping to accelerate the development of this revolutionary technology and bring it to market faster than would otherwise be possible. Sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, represents another crucial technology for reducing the environmental impact of aviation. SAF is produced from renewable feedstocks like used cooking oil, agricultural waste, or specially grown energy crops, and can be used in existing aircraft engines with little or no modification. This makes SAF a practical solution for reducing aviation emissions while the industry develops longer-term technologies like electric and hydrogen-powered aircraft. The environmental benefits of SAF are significant. Depending on the feedstock and production process, SAF can reduce lifecycle carbon emissions by 50% to 80% compared to traditional jet fuel. This reduction comes from the fact that the carbon released when SAF is burned was recently captured from the atmosphere by the plants used to produce the fuel, creating a much more balanced carbon cycle than fossil fuels. Private aviation has been a leader in SAF adoption, with many companies making significant commitments to use SAF for their operations. This leadership is crucial because it provides the market demand that's needed to scale up SAF production and reduce costs. Let me give you some examples of how private aviation companies are implementing SAF programs. Some companies have committed to using SAF for a percentage of their fuel needs, even though it currently costs more than traditional jet fuel. Others have partnered with SAF producers to develop dedicated supply chains that ensure reliable access to sustainable fuel. But the private aviation industry's commitment to SAF goes beyond just purchasing existing fuel. Companies in our industry have invested in SAF production facilities and research programs that are helping to develop more efficient production processes and identify new feedstock sources. One particularly innovative approach involving carbon capture technology to produce SAF from carbon dioxide captured directly from the atmosphere. This process, known as direct air capture, can theoretically produce fuel that has net negative carbon emissions, actually removing carbon from the atmosphere rather than adding to it. The private aviation industry's investment in and adoption of SAF is helping to create the market conditions that will make sustainable fuel widely available and cost competitive with traditional jet fuel. Carbon offset programs represent another important tool for addressing the environmental impact of aviation, while longer-term technological solutions are being developed. Carbon offsets work by funding projects that remove or prevent the release of carbon dioxide equivalent to the emissions produced by aviation activities. But not all carbon offset programs are created equal, and the private aviation industry has been a leader in developing and implementing high-quality offset programs that provide real, measurable environmental benefits. The best offset programs focus on projects that are additional, meaning they wouldn't have happened without the offset funding, and that provide verifiable, long-term carbon reduction or removal. Private aviation companies have developed sophisticated offset programs that go far beyond simple tree planting to include projects like renewable energy development, methane capture from landfills and agricultural operations, and direct air capture technology that removes carbon dioxide directly from the atmosphere. Let me describe some of the innovative offset projects that private aviation companies are supporting. One program funds the development of renewable energy projects in developing countries, displacing fossil fuel power generation and providing clean energy access to communities that previously lacked reliable electricity. Another program supports regenerative agriculture practices that increase soil carbon storage while improving agricultural productivity and farmer incomes. These projects provide multiple benefits: carbon sequestration, improved food security, and economic development in rural communities. Some of the most advanced offset programs support direct air capture technology that uses specialized equipment to remove carbon dioxide directly from the atmosphere and store it permanently underground. While this technology is still expensive, private aviation industry support is helping to scale it up and reduce costs. These comprehensive offset programs allow private aviation clients to achieve carbon neutral or even carbon negative flights while supporting environmental restoration and clean energy development around the world. Beyond new technologies and fuels, the private aviation industry is also focusing on operational efficiency improvements that can significantly reduce environmental impact. These improvements involve optimizing flight planning, aircraft utilization, and operational procedures to minimize fuel consumption and emissions. Advanced flight planning systems use real-time weather data, air traffic information, and aircraft performance characteristics to identify the most fuel-efficient routes and altitudes for each flight. These systems can often reduce fuel consumption by 5% to 10% compared to traditional flight planning methods. Aircraft positioning and utilization optimization involves strategically locating aircraft to minimize empty positioning flights, which occur when aircraft must fly without passengers to reach their next assignment. By using sophisticated scheduling and positioning algorithms, private aviation companies can significantly reduce these empty flights. Let me give you an example of how operational efficiency improvements work in practice. A private aviation company might use predictive analytics to anticipate where aircraft will be needed based on historical travel patterns and current bookings. By positioning aircraft strategically, they can reduce the number of empty positioning flights and the associated fuel consumption and emissions. Another example involves optimizing aircraft selection for specific missions. By matching aircraft size and capabilities more precisely to mission requirements, companies can avoid using larger, less fuel-efficient aircraft for missions that could be served by smaller aircraft. Ground operations efficiency is another area where significant improvements can be made. Using ground power units instead of aircraft engines while parked, optimizing taxi procedures, and coordinating with air traffic control to minimize delays can all contribute to reduced fuel consumption and emissions. These operational efficiency improvements demonstrate that environmental responsibility in private aviation isn't just about new technology. It's also about using existing technology more intelligently and efficiently. The private aviation industry's approach to environmental sustainability is characterized by unprecedented collaboration between companies, manufacturers, fuel producers, and environmental organizations. This collaboration is essential because addressing aviation's environmental impact requires coordinated action across the entire industry ecosystem. Industry organizations like the National Business Aviation Association and the European Business Aviation Association have developed comprehensive sustainability programs that provide guidance, resources, and coordination for environmental initiatives. These programs help companies implement best practices and measure their environmental performance consistently. Manufacturers are collaborating with operators and fuel producers to develop and test new technologies and fuels. This collaboration ensures that new developments meet the practical needs of operators while achieving meaningful environmental benefits. One example of this collaboration is the development of industry-wide sustainability standards and reporting frameworks. These standards allow companies to measure and report their environmental performance consistently, enabling meaningful comparisons and continuous improvement. Another example is the coordination of SAF purchasing programs that allow multiple companies to pool their demand and negotiate better prices and supply terms with fuel producers. This collective purchasing power helps to scale up SAF production and reduce costs for all participants. Research and development collaboration is also crucial for advancing sustainable aviation technologies. Companies are sharing research costs and results to accelerate the development of electric aircraft, hydrogen fuel systems, and other advanced technologies. This collaborative approach ensures that the private aviation industry's environmental initiatives are coordinated, effective, and capable of achieving meaningful impact at scale. An important aspect of sustainable private aviation is engaging clients in environmental responsibility and providing them with tools and options to minimize their travel's environmental impact. The best private aviation providers don't just implement environmental programs behind the scenes, they actively involve clients in sustainability efforts and provide transparency about environmental impact. This client engagement begins with education about the environmental impact of different travel options and the steps that can be taken to minimize that impact. Clients are provided with information about the carbon footprint of their flights and the various options available for offsetting or reducing those emissions. Many private aviation providers offer clients the option to purchase carbon offsets for their flights, often with detailed information about the specific projects that their offset purchases will support. Some companies make carbon offsetting automatic for all flights, building the cost into their pricing and handling the offset purchases on behalf of clients. Advanced providers offer clients detailed environmental reporting that shows the carbon footprint of their travel over time and the impact of various sustainability measures. This reporting can help clients make more informed decisions about their travel and identify opportunities to reduce their environmental impact. Some clients are going beyond just offsetting their flights to become active supporters of sustainable aviation development. They're investing in electric aircraft companies, supporting SAF production facilities, and funding research into advanced sustainable aviation technologies. Let me share an example of how client engagement in sustainability works in practice. A client who frequently uses private aviation for business travel might receive monthly reports showing their carbon footprint, the offset projects their flights have supported, and suggestions for reducing their environmental impact through more efficient routing or aircraft selection. This client engagement approach ensures that sustainability becomes a shared responsibility between private aviation providers and their clients, creating a stronger foundation for long-term environmental progress. Looking toward the future, the private aviation industry is investing in even more advanced sustainable technologies that could revolutionize aviation's environmental impact. These technologies include hydrogen-powered aircraft, advanced biofuels, and even more sophisticated carbon capture and utilization systems. Hydrogen-powered aircraft represent a potentially transformative technology for sustainable aviation. Hydrogen fuel cells or hydrogen combustion engines can power aircraft with zero direct carbon emissions, producing only water vapor as a byproduct. While the technology is still in early development, several companies are working on hydrogen-powered aircraft for private aviation applications. Advanced biofuels produced from algae or other specially engineered organisms could provide even greater environmental benefits than current SAF. These fuels could potentially be produced with net negative carbon emissions while providing performance characteristics that are identical or superior to traditional jet fuel. Carbon capture and utilization technology could eventually allow aircraft to actually remove carbon from the atmosphere during flight, making aviation a net carbon sink rather than a carbon source. While this technology is still theoretical, research is underway to develop practical systems that could be integrated into aircraft. Urban air mobility, using electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, could provide sustainable alternatives to ground transportation for short-distance travel. These aircraft could connect city centers with airports or provide point-to-point transportation within metropolitan areas with zero direct emissions. But perhaps the most exciting aspect of these future technologies is how they could work together to create a completely sustainable aviation ecosystem. Electric aircraft for short flights, hydrogen-powered aircraft for medium ranges, and advanced biofuels for long-range flights could provide sustainable options for every type of aviation mission. The private aviation industry's investment in these future technologies is helping to accelerate their development and bring them to market sooner than would otherwise be possible. The transition to sustainable aviation isn't just an environmental imperative. It's also creating significant economic opportunities for companies that are leading the development and implementation of sustainable technologies. The sustainable aviation market is expected to grow dramatically over the next decade, creating opportunities for innovation, investment, and business development. Companies that are early adopters of sustainable aviation technologies are positioning themselves as leaders in what will become a major market segment. They're developing expertise and capabilities that will be increasingly valuable as environmental regulations become more stringent and client demand for sustainable options increases. The development of sustainable aviation technologies is also creating new business opportunities and revenue streams. Companies are developing new services around carbon offsetting, sustainable fuel supply, and environmental consulting that provide additional value to clients while supporting sustainability objectives. Investment in sustainable aviation is attracting significant capital from investors who recognize both the environmental importance and the economic potential of these technologies. This investment is accelerating the development and deployment of sustainable aviation solutions. But perhaps most importantly, the economic benefits of sustainable aviation extend beyond just the aviation industry. The development of sustainable aviation fuels, electric aircraft, and carbon offset projects creates jobs and economic opportunities in agriculture, renewable energy, manufacturing, and environmental services. Let me give you an example of how sustainable aviation creates broader economic benefits. SAF production facilities create jobs in rural areas where agricultural feedstocks are grown and processed. Electric aircraft manufacturing creates high-tech manufacturing jobs. Carbon offset projects create employment in forestry, renewable energy, and environmental restoration. This economic dimension of sustainable aviation ensures that environmental progress also contributes to economic development and job creation, creating a positive cycle that supports continued investment and innovation. The private aviation industry's leadership in sustainable aviation is having impacts that extend far beyond the industry itself. The technologies and practices being developed for private aviation are being adapted for commercial aviation, creating environmental benefits across the entire aviation sector. The market demand created by private aviation's adoption of sustainable technologies is helping to scale up production and reduce costs, making these technologies more accessible to other industries and applications. Electric aircraft technology developed for private aviation is being adapted for cargo delivery, emergency services, and urban transportation. SAF production capacity developed to serve private aviation is also available for commercial aviation, helping to reduce the environmental impact of the entire aviation industry. Carbon offset programs developed by private aviation companies are providing models and best practices that are being adopted by other industries. But the influence of private aviation's environmental leadership extends beyond just technology transfer. The industry's commitment to environmental responsibility is helping to change perceptions about aviation's environmental impact and demonstrating that it's possible to maintain high levels of service and performance while dramatically reducing environmental impact. This leadership is also influencing policy and regulation development, with governments and international organizations looking to private aviation's sustainability initiatives as models for broader aviation environmental policies. The private aviation industry's environmental leadership is helping to accelerate the transition to sustainable aviation across the entire industry, multiplying the environmental benefits of the investments and innovations being made in private aviation. This broader impact demonstrates that private aviation's environmental leadership is contributing to global environmental progress that extends far beyond the industry itself. For individuals who use or are considering private aviation, understanding the environmental impact and the options for minimizing that impact is crucial for making responsible decisions. The good news is that there are many practical steps that can be taken to reduce the environmental impact of private aviation while still enjoying its benefits. The first step is choosing private aviation providers that are committed to environmental responsibility and that offer comprehensive sustainability programs. Look for companies that use SAF, offer carbon offset programs, and are investing in sustainable technologies like electric aircraft. When planning flights, consider options that can reduce environmental impact. Flying direct routes instead of making stops can reduce fuel consumption. Choosing aircraft that are appropriately sized for your mission can improve fuel efficiency. Coordinating with other travelers to share flights can reduce per-passenger emissions. Take advantage of carbon offset programs, but choose high-quality offsets that provide real, additional, and verifiable environmental benefits. The best offset programs provide detailed information about the projects they support and the environmental benefits they provide. Consider supporting the development of sustainable aviation technologies through investment or advocacy. Many sustainable aviation companies are seeking investors and supporters who can help accelerate the development and deployment of clean aviation technologies. But perhaps most importantly, use private aviation strategically and efficiently. When private aviation enables you to be more productive, reduce overall travel time, or accomplish objectives that wouldn't be possible with other forms of transportation, it can provide environmental benefits that offset its direct emissions. By making informed, responsible choices about private aviation use, individuals can enjoy its benefits while minimizing environmental impact and supporting the development of sustainable aviation technologies. As we wrap up today's episode, I want you to understand that the future of private aviation is not just sustainable, it's leading the way toward a more sustainable future for all of aviation. The investments, innovations, and commitments being made by the private aviation industry today are creating the technologies and practices that will transform aviation's environmental impact. The electric aircraft, sustainable fuels, and carbon offset programs that we've discussed aren't just concepts or distant possibilities. They're real technologies and programs that are being implemented today. Every flight powered by sustainable aviation fuel, every investment in electric aircraft development, and every high-quality carbon offset purchase is contributing to a more sustainable future for aviation. But the transition to sustainable aviation requires continued commitment, investment, and innovation from everyone involved in the industry. Operators, manufacturers, fuel producers, and clients all have roles to play in creating a sustainable aviation future. The private aviation industry's leadership in this transition demonstrates that environmental responsibility and exceptional service are not mutually exclusive. It's possible to provide the convenience, efficiency, and luxury that define private aviation while dramatically reducing environmental impact. The sustainable skies of the future are not just a vision. They're a destination that the private aviation industry is actively working to reach through innovation, investment, and unwavering commitment to environmental responsibility. Next time on Above the Clouds, we'll conclude our series by looking toward the future of private aviation, exploring the emerging technologies, changing market dynamics, and evolving client needs that will shape the industry in the decades to come. We'll examine how artificial intelligence, autonomous flight systems, and new business models are transforming private aviation, and we'll discuss what these changes mean for the future of luxury travel and business aviation. Until then, remember that the future of aviation is being written today through the sustainable technologies and practices being developed and implemented by leaders in the private aviation industry. Every choice we make about how we fly today is helping to create the sustainable aviation future of tomorrow. This has been Above the Clouds, the untold stories of aviation. I'm your host, and I'll see you next time, Above the Clouds.